Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Everyone's been a silly child at one time or another, so let's start with a little story about that. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Why don't you go home? When I was about 8 years old, my family went to visit my uncle. My uncle loves ships and worked in the shipping industry his entire life. One day, my brother, uncle, and I were going to the top of the local mountain to see a historical ship come into the area. I didn't really want to go, but my uncle said, "You'll regret it," when I said I wanted to stay home, so I went too. My parents went off somewhere else, so it was just the three of us on top of this mountain waiting for this ship. I was getting bored waiting for the ship and asked where it was. The ship can't arrive until all the other boats leave. Why doesn't someone just tell them to all go home? Why don't you go home? My brother and uncle laugh, and I walk away. I walk down the mountain, past where we parked the car, down the road, along the beach, back onto the street, and back to my uncle's place. The walk probably took 2 to 3 hours. I remember a lot of things happening on that walk home. Someone was laying in a bunch of bushes. I'm not sure if they were dead or asleep, but being a child, I just ran away and forgot 2 minutes later. Some youth group was playing a sport on the beach, and a girl with glasses caught the ball and promptly face-planted. The coach awkwardly said, good catch, name of girl. I was walking past a fence, singing to myself, and some kids put their water gun through a gap and squirted me. They seemed a couple years younger than me, so I briefly considered walking onto their property and chasing them, but kept going instead. I get back to my uncle's and grab a fruit roll-up type thing. I'm feeling a bit hungry after walking so long. Soon enough, my parents come home, and my brother and uncle too. Mom's in tears because she thought I'd been abducted, and the police were out looking for me too. My parents and uncle were amazed how I could remember how to get home after never having been to either the mountain nor my uncle's house before. And our second story. All I wanted was a day off. This happened a few years ago in 2018. I used to work as a nighttime security for an office building that rented office space for other companies on Paulista Avenue, which is pretty much the Brazilian version of Times Square, so it was pretty busy. We'd work in pairs from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. and be off until 7 p.m. the next day, so work 12 hours and off 36 hours. We wouldn't get days off aside from the annual 20 to 30-day paid vacation. Other than that, whatever day your shift landed on, you had to be there. We were hired there through a security firm that had a contract with the building, so we would have a post supervisor that would work from Monday through Friday during the day shift that was responsible for letting us know if there was going to be any extra work being done in the building for us workers from other companies and for shift scheduling. In case someone was out sick, for example, he had to find someone to cover. Now that's out of the way, on to the actual story. Names were changed. So it was around October, and I was excited because my girlfriend and I had bought tickets for Brazil Game Show, which is our E3. But there was only one problem. I was scheduled for a shift on the same day, so I had to find someone to trade shifts with before then. So there I was, one day waiting for my shift to end when the reception phone rings. I pick up, and it's John, my coworker, that takes over my shift. He says he can't make it on time because he's in the hospital with his mother. This is around 6:30 a.m. Geez, thanks for the heads up. I say no problem, that I can wait. Luckily, it was the weekend and the offices are all closed, so I can just chill. I call the post supervisor to let him know I'll be staying late due to John being late, since company policy states there must be at least 2 of us at the post at all times. My partner goes home as soon as his relief arrives, and we just sit around talking for a bit. 12 p.m. comes, and John is still a no-show, so I try getting in touch with him a few times to no success. I talk to the post supervisor, and he agrees to let me do the rest of the shift since, heck, I'm already there anyways, and it'd be at least 2 hours before someone would show up for me to leave, and this was a perfect opportunity for me to get someone to take my shift to go to BGS. John agrees to take my shift on the day of the event, and I remind the post supervisor every day for the entire week to make sure he wouldn't forget and that he'd pass this on to HR and the general supervisor. We always had to notify them about shift trades. So the day comes, and I'm at the event with my girlfriend, and it's just amazing. We're having a great time, and at about 6:50 p.m., my phone rings. I take a look, and it's work. I find it odd since everything was already worked out. I pick up and it's John asking where I am and if I'm arriving soon. Confused, I remind him he's taking my shift today, and he says he can't because he promised another coworker he'd take the day shift for extra money, so he'd been there all day. I get angry and yell at him that he'd been there all day and he knew I wouldn't be coming, and that if at least he had called earlier, I might have made it. But I was in another city and for him to figure it out and that we had a deal. Later that night, I get a call from the general supervisor. He asks why I didn't show up for work. I explain what happened, and he had no idea that John was supposed to take over my shift. Apparently, the post supervisor forgot to inform him. And I know that this wasn't done to screw me over. The post supervisor and I are still good friends to this day. But sadly, since nothing was confirmed in the eyes of our bosses, I was in the wrong and ended up getting a one-day suspension. I saw it as a win. I could use an extra day off, but deep down I felt very angry at John for screwing me over like that. All he had to do was call me earlier, and I would have come in, no problem. I later learned he was stirring up trouble with the other night shift as well, because he wanted to work nights because we get a 20% bonus for working nights in Brazil. So I knew then I had to get back at him somehow. A few months later, I'm covering a night shift at a different post where John now works, and we're working the shift together. We're stationed across the street from each other. It's a large property for a cement factory. I'm in the main reception and he's in the parking lot, in the entrance booth, and switch every few hours. After the midnight switch, I notice he turns off the camera for the inside of the booth and says he's going to take a nap. I say, okay, I thought this was the moment I've been waiting for. Caught sleeping on the job. I can't believe he forgot the stunt he pulled on me, and that such a golden opportunity was presenting itself. Not even I could believe what was about to happen. I wait a little and switch the camera on and hit the jackpot. If only he was really sleeping. Turns out he was doing drugs with one of the women from the neighborhood. I instantly started recording this, but wait, there's more. They start having some fun. I really couldn't believe my eyes. Like, really? Really? He'll be lucky if he finds a job in this field again. I sent it all to the general supervisor, and he was pissed. He came that night to the post, and I didn't think I'd ever heard yelling so loud. Told John to go to HQ as soon as his shift was over and that he was being fired. I was so happy. But wait, there's more. John decided to sue the firm for me having recorded him without his permission, and the firm tracked down the woman that he was with that night. Turns out it wasn't a woman. It was a teen, an underage teen. John was arrested. I didn't want it to end as it did, but hey, karma's a beach, and all I wanted was a day off. And our last story. Sue me. I haven't always been a lawyer. I was a law student once, and law students have all the arrogance of a lawyer, 1% of the knowledge, but 10 times the reckless abandon. Here's how all that came together. I moved to DC to do the last semester of my law schooling at Georgetown. I jumped in an apartment with 2 other people, but never met the landlord. The people liked me and said I could move in, but they said the landlord had a review process that could take a few weeks because he's lazy and/or slow. They also mentioned he was a huge jerk, never fixed anything, hadn't so much as mowed the grass in years, and hadn't paid the light bill in the lobby for months, so we had no porch lights. Whatever, I thought. I needed a place. I asked them if they cared if I moved in that day, though, and they were fine with it. I knew enough landlord-tenant law in DC to know that the tenant basically always wins, so long as they're paying and not destroying the property. We used to call it the peeing on the walls rule. So I moved in and just skipped the interview. Sent my first check to the landlord right away, a deposit, followed immediately by a month's rent. He deposited them as soon as he got them. A week later or so, he raises hell about me moving in without an interview and threatens to kick me out. I kindly pointed out that he'd accepted my deposit and rent payment, and therefore I was officially a tenant. If he wanted to kick me out, he'd have to start the process in court, which is expensive and takes forever. He huffed and left me alone. I quietly paid my rent for months and months, but alas, all good things come to an end, and I had to move out eventually. I emailed the landlord 2 months, then 1 month in advance of leaving. I let him know that he should come inspect the property to make sure I'd not caused any damage that would require my deposit, and that if not, I would like it back. I never heard from him. The time eventually came that I was done living there and moving out. I had everything packed and was ready to leave, then notified the landlord that I would like my deposit back. He said if I wanted it back, I could start the process in court. I smiled. I already knew that was coming. Turns out, Mr. Landlord, those emails I sent you happen to correspond with the exact days and timing that I'm required to give you in order to get my security deposit back. Oh, by the way, the request to come inspect the premises that you never replied to was also part of the process. And by not coming, you've officially waived your inspection as of today, 45 days later or something. Also, I happen to have already filled out the small claim for return of security deposit. Here's your copy. I'm electronically filing this with the court today. Good luck. About 10 days later, I got a check in the mail. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.